Today's Take 5 with the Saints, April the 5th, is someone who, if you've heard of Mother Teresa, you may not have heard of this lady, but she was a woman of profound faith who preceded the work of Mother Teresa in India, a native Indian herself named Pandita Mary Ramabai. And she is known by some as the mother of modern India, a person who, in challenging the strict adherence to the traditional caste system in India, primarily through the way in which she carried out ministry, first as a Hindu and then later converting to Christianity, helped to loosen some of the shackles of that system, not only for women, but for those who were born into lower castes, impoverished people who had been abandoned simply because they didn't belong in the caste or in the society to which they physically found themselves. So much to say about this remarkable woman today. The scripture that goes with her feast day comes out of Luke chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. Then Jesus told them a parable about their need to pray always and not to lose heart. He said, "In a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor had respect for people. In that city there was a widow who kept coming to him and saying, 'Grant me justice against my opponent.' For a while he refused, but later he said to himself, 'Though I have no fear of God and no respect for anyone, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will grant her justice, so that she may not wear me out by continually coming.' And the Lord said, 'Listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God grant justice to his chosen ones who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long in helping them? I tell you, he will quickly grant justice to them. And yet, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?'" Pandita Mary Ramabai was actually, like the widow, a real widow who strove to make sure that not only her own cause, but the cause of those who fell into similar circumstances as herself would be answered, and those needs of those people would be taken care of. She was actually born into a fairly prominent family, born into the highest caste of Indian society, the Brahmin caste, which was traditionally the priestly caste of Hindu society. But at a very young age, her parents died of a plague. So strike one was actually that she was a woman, but combined with strike two, now she's an orphan. She found herself, despite her noble birth, being an outcast of society. At a very young age, teenage years, she was married, but within 18 months, her husband died of a cholera epidemic. So strike three for her. She was now also a widow. But she was also, even when she had that experience of the third mark against her of being an outcast, so to speak, she spoke out against the strict caste system, particularly in how it set up walls between social and religious groups, as well as walls between men and women, particularly when a man had a need. Their caste especially would take care of them, but society at large was more amenable to taking care of men. Not so for women. Well, she decided she was going to pursue an education, even though she was not allowed to. And fortunately, at a young age, before her father died, her father taught her the Sanskrit language and also taught her the Vedas, which were the classic Hindu texts and beliefs of Hinduism. But when her parents and then her husband died, she was able to go to England, and in 1883 she spent time with an organization called the Wantage Sisters, which was an Anglican religious community that was placed near Oxford. And she realized very quickly that this is where she belonged. She came to know the faith. In fact, she was baptized fairly soon after living with them in 1883. But she also admired deeply their ministry, which became something that would shape her ministry when she later returned to India, because that community of nuns, their primary clientele, so to speak, were former prostitutes. While she was living there, she also attended Cheltenham Ladies' College, which was an institution that promoted women's suffrage and also was very adamant that the same subjects that men could study should also be accessible to women. 6 years after going to England, she returned to India as a Christian in 1889 and founded in Mumbai what was called the Mukti Mission, which was essentially a home for abandoned women and orphans from the Brahmin caste in Indian society. You can see why I mentioned Mother Teresa, that this is a prelude of some of the work that Mother Teresa, a generation or two later, would start doing. But another famine, you can see this was a regular occurrence, unfortunately, in India, struck in 1896. And when that happened, her mission expanded to women and orphans of all castes, which, let's just say, generated a little bit of controversy within Indian society. But one of the things, in addition to having a shelter for them, was she wanted to provide them both an education, the ability to find a vocation, and the ability to find a place to fit into Indian society. Needless to say, that was an uphill battle. But her work inspired people, inspired Mahatma Gandhi later, who was a great admirer of Pandita Mary Ramabai. She continued her work translating from the religious front the Bible into the West Indian language called Marathi. Her title, Pandita, by the way, was a title given to her which meant the learned one, which is a very honorable title to give, especially to a woman in Indian society. She was a person who, as she grew her mission in ministry and education, relied upon the generosity of others, particularly from British and Western sources, to help fund her ministry, much like Mother Teresa after her. And she was a person who, despite the challenges that she faced from hardline Indian traditionalists, she never gave up the mission. One of the things that she wrote that is very profound and touching to me is she said, "What a blessing this burden does not fall on me, but Christ bears it on his shoulders, and no one but he could transform and uplift the downtrodden womanhood of India and of every land." As we give thanks for people like Mother Teresa, for Mahatma Gandhi, for all of those who came later and helped to bring India to a fully modern society, we can very much thank Pandita Mary Ramabai, not just for her civic and social work, but for her deep, abiding, and like the widow in Luke, her persistent faith that kept her coming back again and again to make sure the gospel was proclaimed by word, but especially by deed. Thanks for joining me. Our saint for the day tomorrow, we hop back to the United States, but a person who became a prominent figure in missionary work to Chinese Americans, Daniel G.C. Wu. Please join me as we celebrate his feast day tomorrow. Take care and see you then.